No, thank you. Thanks everyone for attending today. Again, my name's Nathan Hall. Official title at IABB is SEO analyst, but I really help with just digital marketing in general, SEO being one of the areas of expertise and help that I provide to IABB. Today we're going to be covering basic digital marketing ROI basics overview and really looking at your analytics, specifically Google Analytics, to get actionable insights from that data. And to start, we'll just look at kind of overview of what I'll be covering today. So we're going to start with just a basic discussion of metrics, why they matter, and then moving into looking at Google Analytics at a high level. I'm not going to get into the weeds with Google Analytics, but I am going to go over some basic navigation and conversion elements that you would use to track your campaigns and to see how performance is going for those who may not have much experience with Google Analytics. And I will be keeping it at a fairly high level. Next up, we'll be looking at, once you kind of know how to get the data out of the tool, the next step is, well, what do you do with it? And so really we're going to have a conversation around topics such as attribution and lead tracking that we really use in digital marketing as our process for continual improvement in campaigns with the goal of maximizing that ROI. Last, I'll have a slide with resources. I won't really be going over them in the presentation, but we will be providing the slide deck at the end, and so you'll have those resources as well. And then we're going to open it up just for some questions. Really, anything that you guys have questions about regarding digital marketing. Again, I have 20 years experience in digital from early days of the Wild West of SEO, was an original user of Google AdWords at the time, that's now Google Ads. And really all of the different programs that have come and go in the last 20 years. So be more than happy to discuss any kind of issues you're having or questions you have around your data or your tracking for conversions. So let's start with just kind of, the high level topic of why metrics matter. I mean, this seems fairly obvious, I think, for a lot of people, but, in my consulting time, I've really seen that this, even at the IABB and the BBB, this is still an issue and a really strong discussion point that we need to have around, what is the core business goal? And really that it starts there. If you don't have a goal, if you don't have a direction you want to go, then really how are you going to get there? And so really the idea of using this analytics data is, you can't improve it if you can't measure it. And so we really want to kind of create this framework around the goals and then the way in which we're going to track those goals. And partly because this is really important in terms of the analytics, because there's going to be pieces within the analytics that allow you to determine, are you meeting those KPIs, are you exceeding them, or are you not? And so that's kind of really the way this all comes together, is once you know what your goal is, then you develop the list of, for this discussion, it's going to be online events that we're going to use to determine how have we performed. And then the KPIs, the key performance indicators, are going to be the data points that allow us to judge whether or not we're succeeding or failing in the goal. So, really kind of starting with the KPI, because it really is the piece that we're going to use to determine whether or not we're meeting that goal. And a lot of times I see clients who they have KPIs, but they're not going to impact the goal. They're not tied directly to the goal. They're not something that the team can move the needle on and track and see, oh, we performed 20% better on this key performance indicator, and that ties directly into this financial goal that we have as a business. So KPIs, what are they? Quantifiable, measurable, actionable. So that idea that just because your traffic's up, that may or may not mean anything if you can't take action on it, or your traffic's down but you don't know why, and again you're unable to take action. So the KPIs are developed in a way that we're able to measure them and take action off of them. And again, they tie directly to that business goal, so they're critical to the success of the organization. Ideally, we want to limit these key metrics to, in this slide, this is pulled from Adobe's recommendations, but limited to 5 key metrics. Sometimes you really only need one core key metric that you're going to track that really shows whether or not you're succeeding or failing in your digital efforts. But try to keep it within reason. The more KPIs you're tracking, the fuzzier the data gets sometimes, or harder it is to make decisions off of it. And apply consistently so that you do it the same way every time. It's kind of like that idea of, you weighing yourself. If you use 3 different scales, well, you're going to get 3 different numbers and it might not tell you much. But if you use the same scale, even if it's broken, it will still tell you the trend. It'll tell you whether or not you're gaining or losing. And then what are they not? Metrics that are vague or unclear. Nice to know metrics that are not actionable. It's like, yeah, our traffic's up 40%. Well, if that's not tied to a direct KPI, then what does that really mean? And also, what is the action you take off of it? Reports, top search engines, top keywords, all those things are great. We rank #1 for a particular keyword. Well, if nobody searches for that keyword, then was that really that important? And the refutable part is that we need to make sure they're not subjective, and that these are hard data points that can't be refuted. And this is pulled from a presentation from Adobe. And I like using this in the slide deck just because I feel like examples are a lot harder or a lot better for this kind of conversation than these high level topics. And so to look at, okay, well, what would be if I were a business, what would be some very specific examples of the KBR, or the key business goal, the events that we're going to track, and the KPIs that will tell us whether or not, we're succeeding or failing. And it definitely, in the terms of e-commerce, is probably the easiest way to kind of look at this, because those conversion events are so clear. Someone adds something to a shopping cart, someone checks out. But in general, I think the examples of, a key business goal, increase sales. Well, I think for most businesses, that is a key business goal. And then, well, how are we going to begin to track that? And so in this example, we kind of are taking, an enterprise goal down to an online goal. And really in this conversation, we're just going to stay focused on the online goals. So in this case, maybe the company goal is to increase revenue, but a portion of the business is online. And so for this example, we're going to look to improve online revenue. And the event that we're going to be tracking within our analytics is how many people completed the checkout process. And, on top of that, where did this traffic come from, and which traffic resulted in the most checkouts, and tying that back to, again, this key business goal of online revenue. And then the KPI gets into, what was the conversion rate? And so you can see, okay, well, now that we're dealing with the conversion rate, we can see that, your business may be cyclical, but that conversion rate is something that we always shoot to have, an X% conversion rate. And when we exceed that is, the goal. And so that's going to be the key performance indicator that we measure. That's a data point within the analytics that we can pull in a report, and we can provide to managers to show, okay, here's the campaign we ran, here's how many, here's the conversion rate that we got on it, here's potentially the online revenue it generated. And so that's really this idea that, you start with this goal, you develop the events that are going to kind of trigger within your online, your website, and then the KPI is going to be the actual data points that you're measuring within your analytics and reporting on. So this was a question that Clay posed to me as one that, a lot of businesses, especially if you're a small business, you're more than likely not going to have an in-house agency. Maybe if you're a larger company, you will. But both of this topic around KPIs and goals are very appropriate to both an in-house and an agency relationship, because without those goals and without those KPIs really defined at the beginning of the process, then your engagement either, with the manager that you've hired to run your program or with the agency that you're using to manage it, you're not going to be able to judge whether or not the program's succeeding, whether or not they're succeeding. And so that's why I start with the goals and I start with the KPIs, because that's really going to be what we now use to give the team direction in terms of how they're doing. And so that's why setting these clear goals and KPIs that the team has direct influence over. So, if you give someone a KPI, but they're unable to do anything to improve it or to impact it, then it really isn't a KPI they should be tracked on, because it needs to be something they have direct influence over. Maybe one of the KPIs is email open rate, and that's how you're going to judge your email marketing team. Well, that is something they have direct influence over. They can test, they can improve quality of content to improve those open rates. Also, the key, a key part of this is the reporting. Again, if you're not looking at it regularly, then you can't impact it. So ideally, you want to have KPIs that are reported on weekly, monthly. You may even have KPIs that you want to look at daily, because, the idea is the sooner that you have insight into something either going wrong or going right, then you can take action on it. And the sooner that you get that data, the sooner you're able to make decisions. But the reporting's key, because this is how you hold your team accountable. They're going to provide this. But the other key piece of it is their analysis. So, I'm an SEO analyst, digital marketing analyst, and part of that role is using analytics to say, hey, something happened on this day. We saw traffic go up by 30%. And the analyst part is to answer the why. And so this is why, okay, it's great that they just provided you a report, but if they're not giving you their insight into why do we think we succeeded or why do we think we failed, then we're kind of missing a big piece of, how do we actually improve things as we move forward. And this is one that is basically true for both agency and in-house. But for in-house, you just want to make sure that these marketing channel accounts are owned by the organization and not the individual. I can't tell you how many times I've come in and seen, oh yeah, we have a Facebook business account, but it was one of our individuals who set it up and they left, and now we don't have access to it. So the idea being that, anything that's developed, if you have a Google Ads account, if you have a Facebook ad account, that is an account that's owned by the organization, not an individual. Ideally, it's not even an individual email that would log into it. It would be info@your organization or something to that effect, so that it's always accessible. That account's always accessible, and it's not tied to one individual. When we're talking about the agency, it's really very similar to the in-house in terms of setting the KPIs, having them report on them. But for me, the big piece of the agency relationship is really at the contract, the starting point. And that is the key place where we develop the requirements, we develop the deliverables, the goals, the KPIs. But also important in that contract is, what does this relationship look like if we decide we don't want to continue? Do we, is it a 30-day notice and we're out? Is it, no, we're tied into a 6-month contract that automatically renews if you don't give us, 45-day notice, or any of those type of things. And so that contract's so important at the beginning. I always advise clients to, in that negotiation, really push for the best terms possible. I want the shortest commitment, because I want to know that if I'm not happy with your services, I can get out of it quickly. I want it to be clearly defined of, what does that process look like? It's like one thing I learned early in my business days was, if you don't determine you're out at the beginning, it becomes a lot more difficult when you're ready to leave. And so it's making sure that when the relationship's good, all of these things are detailed out and everyone knows kind of how that's going to operate and what the deliverables are. What are you guaranteeing that you're going to be doing for us? And another key, really, to me, the other big kind of key to watch out for is the ownership of these accounts. A lot of times what you're going to find is an agency is going to want to own this account. They're going to build it for you. They're going to have the admin login. They may not even give you any access. They just send you reports. I really highly discourage that. I think that these marketing accounts are your IP. They are your, they are your business. I don't want you to be held hostage by an agency that says, well, if you leave us, then we're just going to hold on to your account and you're going to have to rebuild it completely from scratch. So with most of these programs, let's say like Facebook, for example, you have your business, you have your ad manager account. Rather than giving a direct admin login to your agency, you give them access to your account, and you can cancel that access at any time. And so they, through that access, can run ads, they can manage everything, but they don't really own your account. And so that to me is just a really important key. And if they do want to own it, just have a conversation around why and what does that look like. And again, what does it look like if you decide that you want to move on or bring it in-house? So just make sure that that's very clearly discussed and defined in the beginning. So moving on to kind of the next topic that, okay, so we have our goals, we have our KPIs, we have our team that's going to be executing these campaigns. Well, now we need to determine, are they working? Are we getting the result that we anticipated from them? And so this is really the idea around tracking of conversions in events. And so for some businesses, you may not really have a hard conversion event, like someone checked out and bought something and you know exactly when that happened and you know how much they purchased. It may be that they signed up for a webinar that you're putting on. It may be that they gave you their email to download a white paper. There can be any type of what I'm going to call conversion events. But the key here is, like we talked about in the early part of this presentation, is that those need to be defined, because they're now going to be what we judge our marketing campaigns off of. And so one of the first things that we have to make sure that we do is any marketing channel that you're running, Facebook, Google Ads, any of the display networks, you're running an ad roll or, some display advertising campaign, they're going to have tracking scripts that they're going to want you to install on your website. Typically, these are put on every single page so that the system can track once someone clicks on the ad on Facebook, Facebook wants to know, what did they do on your website? Did they fill out, the form? Did they convert? Did they, stay for 10 seconds and leave? And so all of that data is important to the advertising campaign, because they use that data then to ideally optimize the ads. And then as your manager, your agency, they're going to use that data to determine, okay, well, this campaign's doing well, let's continue to budget it. This campaign is not doing very well from, a kind of conversion standpoint, so we're going to take that money and put it into, another program. And there's also what I call single page event. So you're going to have, like on Google Ads, you may have a tracker that's put on every single page, but then let's say you have a thank you page for a lead gen form. That may get an individual tracking script, so that's the conversion script. And so what that does is, every time someone gets to the website, fills out the form, hits the submit button, gets to the thank you page, that now tells Google Ads you got a conversion. And why that's important, at least from the agency or the manager standpoint, is I now go into Google Ads and I look at, okay, here's the 100 keywords we were targeting. These 3 keywords resulted in all of our leads. These keywords didn't, and we begin to optimize off of that. But you can't do any of those type of activities if you haven't installed the tracking properly. And so that is something that either your agency or your manager should be well versed in and able to do, but it is absolutely key. The other part of tracking for conversions is this idea of a UTM code. And this is essentially a query string at the end of the URL that tells Google Analytics where this traffic came from, specifically campaign. Because you can go into your Google Analytics and know that, oh, I got 100 visitors from Facebook, but you don't really, it's very difficult if you don't use UTM codes to know, well, did this click come from an ad we ran? Did it come from an organic post? So by putting UTM codes, really, and my advice is that any paid traffic that is driving to your website should have a UTM code, so that you can then look on the back end of your data to see how did it perform. You're going to log into Facebook and see, oh, my ad ran, I got this many clicks, this click-through rate, but you don't really know what happened beyond, if you have your conversion events, you know that it converted, but you don't have a lot of that intermediary data of, how many pages did they look at? Did they bounce really quickly? Did they, what other activities did they perform on the website that maybe weren't the specific conversion event, but still tell you that, yeah, this was a worthy lead that we got. And so I do have a resource, so I'm not going to cover this in great detail, that explains a real high level overview of what UTM codes are, how to use them, and included a link to Google's tool to actually build these. But I'm going to just give you an example of a UTM code we ran on Facebook for a home improvement campaign. And so the UTM is essentially anything after the question mark, UTM underscore source. So we have 3 key variables that give us information on the campaign. There's 2 more that we can add, but for this example, we really only needed these 3 data points. So I know that any click that came from this ad came from Facebook. I know that this was a static ad. It wasn't a video ad. It wasn't an organic post. And I also know, based on this UTM campaign, that this was the spring home improvement campaign, because we might run a summer travel campaign, and then that one would be, summer 2021 travel or something to that effect. And that will then allow us in Google Analytics to look at, well, how did the traffic from this particular source campaign perform once the traffic made it to the website. So with that, I'm going to jump into just a quick walkthrough of Google Analytics and just show you some of the key navigation and areas that we can pull this event and campaign conversion data. So let me open this one up. And so this is a Google Analytics account. This is a demo account that they provide. So it's not real data, but it's still, the way most people would see their data once they came in. So once you log into Google Analytics, this is the first page you come to. It is the audience overview. It's going to give you some basic information on, how many users, how many sessions, how long did they stay, bounce rate for the time period that we've selected here, which right now is April 6th to April 12th. You can change that to any different time frame you want. There's some presets, but you can also just select anything you want. There's also the ability to compare period over period or year over year. To look at, I prefer year-over-year analysis typically for anything cyclical, but it's again that the idea of actionable data. It's one thing to say, okay, our users were 15,000 this month, but I want to know for the same time period last year how much improvement have we seen, or the same time period previous to this one, and look at the performance, and you can do that by the comparison. There is a tab right above audience called real time, but real quick, just in audience, you see there's a lot of different ways to break down the data, and this is mostly just demographic data. So you can look at, the geolocation of your users. Interests is, it's third-party data, so kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it'll still give you some insight. Demographics, age, and whatnot. What technology devices are they using? So that's a lot of the audience information. Real time is going to give you, like it says, what's going on the website in this moment. And so this is showing us right now that there are 33 active users. We can see where they're at, what they're looking at. And this is just showing us right now what's going on the website. The area that I spend most of my time as a digital marketer is in this acquisition tab. And acquisition means, where did we get our traffic from? And the overview is, like it said, every one of these tabs has an overview, and it gives you it's like more of a dashboard. We can see, okay, here's, where our traffic's coming, direct paid, display, affiliate, and how that's behaving. I like to go into this all traffic section and look at my channels. I want to know specifically, okay, how am I doing in these main categories of traffic? Right now, these guys are doing very poorly organically. Very little of their traffic comes in organic, which is no surprise since it's a demo site, and all of the traffic is mainly coming in direct. But this would be a way for us to see, where's our traffic coming from. But the real key piece here too is this column, and this is really where the conversion events can happen. This is an e-commerce website, so it's tying a direct sales revenue conversion event to the traffic. And so I can see, where is my money coming from? Where are we making it? Okay, direct traffic's really the key here. And as an analyst, then I would ask the question of why. Why is direct traffic so much higher than all of our other sources? What do we need to do maybe to improve the paid search? And then one other kind of section within this all traffic is the source medium. And I had mentioned to you previously the UTM code. Well, these are how the UTMs get pulled into Google Analytics. We can see that the source of this traffic was Google, and the medium was the CPC, or the cost per click Google Ads program, and partners, affiliate, same way. And so it's just, if you're using UTM codes, it's a quick way to get in and see. You can also then filter here if you just wanted to say, just show me all the CPC. It's going to, pull in here, and okay, it's only now showing me the Google CPC, and I can see it here, the graph as well. And in addition, there's a lot of other, we can look directly at the social. We can see, Search Console is one of Google's products that gives you a lot of insight into how you're doing organically on Google. One of the cool things here is if you have a Google Ads account, you need to connect it to your Google Analytics. Then you get all of these data points populating. So you can look at, what accounts, in Google Ads were we running? Well, here it is. We've got this Analytics Google Store account, and here's how it's been performing. You can get into all the way down the campaign level. You want to see how your keywords are doing. So a lot of that data is in Google Ads as well, but because it's all Google products, it integrates with analytics, and you can see, oh, here's how this campaign ran, how much traffic we received, and what the revenue that it generated. Couple last ones. Behavior is helpful in terms of if you just want to know how your content's doing. You want to see, okay, where are people coming in? Where are people leaving? So landing pages, what page are they entering in? Exit page, where are they leaving? As an analyst, I look at these things, specifically exit page, to see, oh, we're getting a lot of exits on this page. Why is it? If it makes sense, then okay, there's not an issue. But if it's, a core page that we expect someone to go to the next step and they're exiting on it, well, we now need to look into, okay, why, what's going on there? And you can see there's a lot of other additionally, you don't want to look at your site speed becoming more and more important to Google and their SEO. Finally, we have the conversions, and this is an area where we talked about, setting up your Google Analytics, and you're putting in your conversion scripts so that you can, get information on how your campaigns are doing. And so you can set goals within analytics that say, if someone gets to this page, consider it a goal, so that, it's not exactly a conversion event like someone checking out in the shopping cart, but we want to know, how many people stayed on the website for more than 3 minutes. That's a goal. And then in this, you can see that we could add, different goals to this list to say, okay, well, we just want to see how traffic's doing from these campaigns in terms of bounce rate or other goals that we might set. So this is a lot of just the general navigation elements within analytics. There's this attribution section, which is in beta right now, and we'll cover the topic in a couple of minutes around attribution. But that's another section in there that's going to essentially help you to understand what marketing campaigns are working and not. And so, again, really high level here. There's so much more. I could spend hours just on Google Analytics and how to use it and best practices. But this is, the main way to get around, and the areas that I really look at regularly. Specifically, acquisition is my favorite tab, and the one that I feel like gives a lot of insight into kind of what's working and what isn't. So with that said, I'm going to jump back into the slide deck here. And yeah, and so So that really all kind of gets back to how do we track our KPIs? If you've developed a KPI that says we want to track, the conversion rate on our white paper download. Okay, well that's now a goal that we have. We have an event to or way to track it within analytics, and now we're going to report on it on a weekly basis of what was our, conversion rate for visitors to downloading the white paper, and all of a sudden we see, based on new activities, that percentage is increased by 30%, and we can document it and determine why. And just a quick kind of just discussion around marketing attribution, because it's becoming more and more important that we understand all the different touch points and the way in which they lead to the end goal, because we live in such a fractured society now. We're on our desktop, we're on our mobile, we're looking at different websites on each one of them. We're interacting with a Facebook ad, we're then seeing a display banner that we don't click on but we look at. And so marketing attribution, and I'll just kind of read it verbatim. Marketing attribution is the practice of evaluating the marketing touch points a consumer encounters on their path to purchase. The goal of the attribution is to determine which channels and messages had the greatest impact on the decision to convert or take the desired step. And the idea being here that, let's say there's 5 touch points that we have to get in front of someone before they actually convert. So we have a YouTube video, we have a Facebook ad, we've got a direct email that we send out. Okay, we want to know how each one of these elements impacted the end goal. And so the attribution is just making sure that we know where our traffic's coming from, we know what campaigns are driving it, and we're able to attribute, where did this lead or where did this sale come from. Advanced attribution gets into, well, we're now going to allocate, if there were 5 touch points, we're going to give each touch point 10% credit or 20% credit. And that way, when you're doing your ROI modeling, you use these attribution models to determine, yeah, display, even though no one clicks on a display ad and no one actually converts off of it, we know that based on the data that 70% of our conversions interact or see a banner at the first touch point. And so with that attribution modeling, you can say, oh yeah, we know it's hard to see the performance in terms of a direct tie to, they looked at the banner, they did this action. We know through our attribution that, yeah, that they may not convert off of that banner, but that banner plays a key role in getting them to the final decision point. And attribution can be as simple as, how many people came from the email and then converted. But the idea being is we want to track that and we want to be able to tie it back to the campaign. And that's again why the KPI development and then using the analytics is so important. And I get back to, this whole idea of, one of the fun things about digital marketing for me is I've always been a problem solver. I love, having a problem and trying to come up with a creative way to solve it. It's very much kind of using this scientific method. And, back in the early days of marketing, you didn't have all this data. You didn't have this ability to run an A/B test on, 50% of your users get this, 50% get that. And we're now going to use data to determine what worked better. And so I really kind of liken being a digital marketer to being a scientist this day. You observe the situation, something's working or isn't, you ask a question on, well, I think that if we did this, maybe this would be the result. You then execute it, you run this ad, and now you have a bunch of data that we're going to track to see, did the ad actually do what we expected? You then analyze the result and you develop your analysis and your conclusion, and you rinse and repeat. And it's this idea that we're constantly looking to optimize, to iterate off of what worked or what didn't work. And so in this example I give, it's, a Facebook example of, you know that, Facebook's demographic is closely aligned to who you're looking to get in front of. You'd like to do a lead gen campaign to get people to give you their email and their phone number. We're going to run an ad on Facebook to see if, that is an audience that will interact with our message. We tag it with the proper UTM tracking. We run it for a few weeks. We get the data in. We look at, okay, well, we spent $100. We got 10 leads from this campaign, compare that to other sources. Okay, yeah, $10 per lead is something that is that's a really good deal for us. It very much meets our business goals. And now we're going to continue with this program. We're going to either give it more money, or maybe now that we've determined that it's working, we're going to A/B test some different messaging to see if we can now improve on the performance that we've already achieved with the first ad. And again, like I said, it's a rinse and repeat method, and really kind of thinking about it in terms of a scientific experiment, in that you really want to narrow it down to one variable. If you've got 5 different things that might be impacting, it's really difficult to come to that conclusion. So the more we can kind of focus on one element, see if that really, a good example of this is we're going to run 2 ads, the exact same copy, except we're going to use 2 different images, and we're going to run them to the exact same audience for 2 weeks, and then look at the performance. And at the end of the day, look at how many leads were generated, so that we can determine, oh, actually this message with this image seems to resonate the best with our audience. Looking at time, okay, we're doing pretty well still. And this is always one of my favorite marketing quotes from John Wannamaker. He is a marketer from the 1800s. And it's funny that even today in this digital marketing landscape, it still kind of holds true, which is half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And that is why the reporting, the KPIs, the business goals, the metrics are so important, because what we're achieving with that is this ability to know which half of the advertising is being wasted. We have the data to show it. We know that we spent $500 on a Facebook ad campaign to drive visitors to our lead form, and not a single person filled it out. Okay, we now know that that was wasted advertising dollars. And so this is really where we want to get to. Unfortunately, even in today's landscape, this statement still holds true. So this is an area where we can definitely improve upon using our data. And this is, and I get back to leads specifically. E-commerce is its own kind of beast, but when it comes to leads, because there's a process of getting a lead and converting and closing that lead that needs to be tracked as well, so that at the end of the day, this idea of attribution applies. We know that, okay, we ran a Facebook ad, it generated us 100 leads, but we didn't close a single one of those leads. But we ran the same campaign on LinkedIn. We got half the number of leads, but we closed 30% of them. And that's why that's so key to understanding the end-to-end conversion tracking on the leads, so that we know that, okay, not only do we get a lot of leads from a particular source, but the leads that we get are quality leads. And that way we can tie back to, all right, what is the cost per acquisition of, we've spent, X amount on Facebook, and how many closed sales did we get from that? Not just the leads. We want to look at both of them, because it's going to help us to analyze, okay, really, where should we be putting our money? You may determine that, yeah, we found a lead source that does really well in terms of leads, but we don't close a lot of them, but we close enough of them to still make it an ROI positive interaction. And so this, again, why, knowing, you need to be able to ask your sales team or your operations folks, okay, where did this sale come from? When we closed this lead, where did it originate from? And we need to be able to tie it all back, because that's the information your marketers are going to use to continue to optimize your campaigns and improve them. And as I said before, just some resources for you all if you have more questions. I have a document from the Experience League at Adobe where I pulled a couple of my slides from. A really good discussion just on understanding business goals and tying them to your KPIs in your events, so that you can do what we just reviewed here. Google Analytics, this is a high level overview for small, medium-sized business owners specifically. It's a video course, goes over kind of what I discussed with Google Analytics, but in better detail, but still keeping it at that high level. If you're interested in marketing attribution, a really good article on marketing attribution from a high level. As I said before, UTM basics. So this HubSpot article is a great one on just understanding UTM parameters, why you use them, how you use them. And then finally, this is a tool provided by Google to build your UTM, makes it really easy for you. And so with that, I'm going to pause here for questions. Anything that I covered